The Louisiana Bayou at dawn is one of the most peaceful places in America. Brown water so still it looks like glass, and cypress trees draped in moss. A father and son out early, checking crab traps the way their family has for generations. On this morning, the son reaches into a trap and the wire catches the back of his forearm. Just a small cut, barely worth noticing. He dips his arm into the bayou to rinse it off, the way he's done 100 times, and gets back to work. 18 hours later, that same arm will be swollen, blistered, and turning black, and a surgeon will be standing over it, deciding whether he gets to keep it. To understand how a scratch turns into that, you have to understand the water. This part of southern Louisiana runs on it. The bayous and marshes southwest of New Orleans are a maze of slow, warm, brackish channels, and for the families who live along them, fishing isn't a hobby. It's who they are. Crabbing, shrimping, oystering, all of it passed down from grandparents to grandchildren like a language. So, the morning starts like 1,000 mornings before it. The man and his father load the boat before sunrise, motor out into the shallows, and start pulling traps. The work is fast and physical, all sharp wire, claws, and rope. Small cuts are just part of the job. Everyone who does this has scars on their hands they can't even explain anymore. You get nicked, you rinse it, you keep going, because stopping for every little cut would mean never getting any work done. That instinct, the one that tells you a scratch is nothing, is exactly the instinct this bacteria is built to exploit. When the wire nicks his forearm, he doesn't think twice. It isn't deep. It barely bleeds. He rinses it in the bayou, wipes it on his shirt, and keeps hauling traps. By the time they head back in with a full cooler, he's already forgotten it happened. He feels good. It's a good day. And the thing that's going to put him on an operating table is already inside him, multiplying. The warm, brackish water he rinsed his cut in wasn't clean. Almost no natural water is. But this water carried something that makes infectious disease doctors genuinely afraid. A bacterium called Vibrio vulnificus. Vibrio lives in warm coastal water, and this is the strange part that makes a bayou so dangerous. Open ocean saltwater is usually too salty for it to thrive. Vibrio does its best work in brackish water, the kind you get where rivers and rain dilute the sea into something in between. That is exactly what a Louisiana bayou is. Warm, shallow, half salt, and in the summer months, loaded with it. It doesn't make you sick by being swallowed here. It gets in through broken skin, through a cut, a scrape, a fresh tattoo, or a wire nick on the back of a forearm. Once it's through that barrier and into the warm tissue underneath, it does something most bacteria simply can't. It moves faster than your body can fight back. Vibrio releases toxins that kill the tissue around it, and it kills that tissue faster than your immune system can mount a defense. Your white blood cells show up to a battle that has already lost ground. The dead flesh becomes fuel. The bacteria race outward along the thin sheets of connective tissue that wrap around your muscles, a layer called the fascia, which is why doctors have a specific and terrifying name for what comes next. Necrotizing fasciitis. Flesh dying in real time, faster than a surgeon can sometimes keep up with. People call it flesh-eating bacteria, and that name is earned. In the worst infections, the dead zone can spread several inches in a matter of hours, which is why doctors track this disease not in days, but in ink, drawing a line on the skin at the edge of the damage so they can see how far it crept the next time they check. And the odds are brutal. About 1 in 5 people who get a serious Vibrio vulnificus infection die from it, sometimes within a day or two of feeling the very first symptom. The man in the boat had no idea any of that was happening under his skin. For the first several hours, he felt completely normal. About 6 hours after the cut, the arm started to feel wrong. Not agony, not yet. Just warm and tight and sore, like he'd banged it hard or slept on it strangely. It ached more than a shallow scratch ever should. He figured he'd knocked it against a trap without noticing and irritated the skin. So he took something for the pain, told himself he'd feel better after some sleep, and went to bed. The bacteria did not sleep. They kept spreading through the soft tissue of his forearm all night, and the toxins kept killing everything in their path. He woke up around 3 in the morning because the pain finally dragged him out of sleep. And when he looked at his arm, the skin around the cut had changed. It was dark red now, and hot to the touch, and the redness had spread well past the little wound, creeping outward in a way that skin is not supposed to move. Something deep in his gut told him this was bad, but it was the middle of the night. He was exhausted, and part of him still wanted to believe it was just an infected scratch. He watched it for a while, then made himself lie back down. It's the same mistake almost everyone makes with this infection, and it's completely understandable. In those early hours, it looks like an ordinary bad reaction to a cut, and the human brain will always reach for the simple explanation over the terrifying one. But every hour he spent lying in that bed was another hour the bacteria had his arm all to themselves. By 6 in the morning, there was no denying it anymore. The skin near the cut had gone from red to a grayish black, and blisters had risen across it, tight and dark and full of fluid. The color was climbing up toward his elbow, reaching for his shoulder. His arm was dying, and he could actually watch it happening. He woke his father, and they drove to the nearest emergency room as fast as the truck would take them. At the hospital, there was no long wait, and there were no puzzled looks. The moment the doctor pulled back the sleeve and saw the blackened skin, the blistering, and how far it had already spread, the entire tone of the room changed. There was no time to send off blood samples and wait a day for a lab to confirm what it was. With Vibrio, waiting is exactly how people lose limbs and how people die. The look of it was the diagnosis. A surgeon was called, and he scrubbed in within minutes. What happens in that operating room is not gentle, and it can't be. The only way to stop necrotizing fasciitis is to physically cut out every piece of tissue the bacteria have already killed, because dead tissue can't be saved and it only feeds the infection. There's no medicine that brings dead flesh back to life, and no antibiotic that works fast enough on its own once the tissue is already gone. The surgery is the treatment. The blade is the only thing that can outpace the bacteria. So the surgeon started cutting. He opened the forearm and removed the blackened skin, then the dead layer beneath it, following the damage inward and outward until he finally reached tissue that was still alive and still bleeding. The problem was how deep it had gone. This wasn't just skin. The necrosis had already reached the muscle. By the time he had cleared out everything that was dead, he had taken roughly 4 inches of tissue out of the man's forearm. And even then, standing over that open wound, the surgeon was facing the question Vibrio forces in the worst cases. Was there any real point in trying to save this arm? Or was the only way to save the man's life to take the whole limb? I'll tell you what they decided in a second. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand exactly how the human body can go this wrong, hit the subscribe button, because a new case like this one goes up every single week. Now, back to that operating table and the decision that would define the rest of his life. They decided to fight for the arm. Because he had reached the hospital fast, and because the surgeon had been aggressive about the tissue he removed, there was still enough healthy muscle and blood supply left to work with. They didn't amputate. They cut away everything dead, flooded him with strong antibiotics to kill whatever Vibrio was still in his system, and moved him into intensive care to see if his body could hold the line. It held. Over the next days, the spread finally stopped. The tissue that was left stayed alive. The infection that had been winning by the hour started losing. For the first time since that wire caught his skin, the clock was finally on his side. He kept his arm. He would need more surgeries to clean the wound, and a skin graft to close the huge hole left behind, and months of recovery to get strength back into a forearm that was now missing a piece of itself. The arm he kept would never look the same, and it would carry the mark of that one morning for the rest of his life. But he survived, and he walked out with both arms still attached. Barely. All from a cut he rinsed off in the bayou and forgot about before lunch. And this is not some rare horror story pulled from history. It's happening more, and it's happening right now. In 2025, Louisiana health officials tracked 26 cases of Vibrio vulnificus across the state, and 5 of those people did not survive. To put that in perspective, in a normal year, Louisiana sees around 10 cases and a single death. This was a sharp, deadly spike, and the state wasn't alone. Florida saw even more deaths from it that same year, and cases have now been confirmed as far north as the waters off Massachusetts, in places this bacteria was almost never found before. Doctors along the Gulf have watched this exact sequence play out in real patients: a scratch from crab traps or an oyster shell, a day of feeling strange, blackening skin, and emergency surgery, and a 50-50 chance of walking back out. Nationally, only around 150 to 200 Vibrio vulnificus cases get reported in a typical year, which tells you how unusual it is for a single state to log 26. This is still a rare infection. It's just becoming a little less rare, in a little more of the country, every year that passes. The reason behind the rise is uncomfortable, and the scientists studying it are blunt about it. The Gulf and the coastal waters are getting warmer, and they're staying warm for longer stretches of the year. Vibrio loves warm water, so the season when it's dangerous keeps getting longer, and the map where it can survive keeps creeping north. The water that has always fed these fishing communities is slowly becoming more hostile to the people who depend on it. For generations out here, the biggest risks were the weather and the occasional bad storm. Now, one of the deadliest threats in the marsh is invisible, and it lives in the water itself. There's one more thing that matters, and it could save your life or someone else's. This bacteria is most deadly in people with certain conditions, like liver disease or diabetes, and plenty of people who are at higher risk have no idea they are. So the rule is simple. If you have any open cut or scrape, stay out of warm coastal and brackish water, or cover the wound completely before you go anywhere near it. If you do get exposed, wash any cut with clean water and soap as soon as you can. And if a wound ever starts turning red, swelling, and screaming with pain within hours of being in that kind of water, do not try to sleep it off. Get to an emergency room and tell them you were in coastal water. Those few words point a doctor straight at the thing trying to kill you. And with Vibrio, the only thing that beats it is speed. He did the most ordinary thing in the world. He rinsed a small cut in the same water his family has fished for generations. And that water, warm and slow and beautiful, nearly took his arm and his life inside a single day. The cut was never really the danger. The 18 hours he almost spent ignoring it were. If this one got under your skin, do 2 quick things for me. Tap the like button, because it helps this channel reach the next person who needs to know what a scratch in the wrong water can do. And subscribe, because every week I break down another true case where the human body turns into the scariest story there is. And if you want to see how a single tick on the Appalachian Trail shut down a healthy hiker's organs in 10 days, that case is on screen right now. Go watch it.